You know, with everything that's happening in the world right now, it just goes to show that we we truly are struggling. You know, prices are too high, rent is too high, just the basic necessities in life are just too high. And apparently, CNBC did the numbers, and they came out with an average that Americans need to make in order to live comfortably in America. So, without further ado, let's see what they're talking about, and let's get into it.
The average American says they need to earn $233,000 a year to be financially
A lot
comfortable.
of money.
But in 2021, American workers on average made only $75,203 annually.
Mm.
Americans are sort of looking at how much money they would like to have to be financially secure. And that ends up being basically three times what the average income is in this country. And to be essentially wealthy or really successful, it's magnitudes above that.
Mm.
72% of Americans said they weren't financially secure given their current finances. And more than a quarter of Americans said they'll likely never be financially secure.
By the numbers, their debt is lower and their savings are higher coming out of the pandemic, but they're more anxious about what's going to happen next, if they have job stability, if they're going to be able to have a secure retirement.
With well over half of Americans living paycheck to paycheck.
That job stability is a big one. I've seen people who are making good money and then following a week get laid off. I think that's like the biggest fear right now is job stability.
Many are failing to meet some of their modest financial goals.
There are actually millions of people struggling. It's not
Hardworking
something that
people.
people want to talk about, but if you're in a place where your financial security feels super precarious, you're not alone. And it's not your fault.
So, how did it become so difficult to be financially secure in America? And what can you do about it? Let's do some budgeting. Americans working full time earned a median monthly income of about $4,400 during the second quarter of 2023.
Mm.
The average worker takes home 75.2% of gross wages after taxes and benefits, shrinking the take home pay to about $3,308. And that just isn't enough to cover the cost of living in America today.
The cost of healthcare
Nowhere near.
that has skyrocketed. The cost of attending college has skyrocketed. The cost of purchasing a home has skyrocketed. But nowhere has anyone said wage growth is up 15%,
Not
right?
one.
Take a look at some of the most essential expenses for Americans. The median monthly rent in the US is $2,029 as of June 2023. That amount already accounts for over 46% of the Americans' median pre-tax income. But most US
Jeez.
agencies classify spending more than 30% of one's gross monthly income on rent as being rent burdened. Meanwhile, the median mortgage payment for a 2,400 square foot house was $1,957 per month. However, a common rule of thumb advises spending 28% or less of your pre-tax income on mortgage payments. For the median gross monthly earnings, that translates to just $1,232.
As we talk to households and talk to consumers out in the real world, especially those, say, under 40, housing is the big issue. Rent, mortgage, mortgage, mortgage. It is the
Too
biggest concern that
expensive.
people aren't going to be able to make the next payment.
Inflation is really hurting individuals having stability in their housing. And I think sometimes we underestimate that if you have uncertainty in your housing, it causes uncertainty everywhere.
Housing is also the reason why cities have become more difficult to afford. Americans said it would require more than $1 million in net worth to be financially comfortable in places like San Francisco, New York, and Southern California.
This
Definitely.
is why we've seen some migration or mobility around the country where some people say, I'm living in a high cost state like California or New York. We really want to sort of pack up and go to an area that's less expensive. And one of the ironies of that is those places that were cheaper before are now becoming more expensive.
Americans spend on average $690.75 on food every month, according to the latest data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics.
Imagine
That
if you
amount
got a
is
lot of
significantly
kids.
higher than any of USDA's estimated grocery bills, including more generous and liberal food plans. Add the out-of-pocket health expenditures that cost the average Americans $96.42 every month, and you get a total expense of $2,816.17 for renters and $2,744.17 for homeowners. That
Mm.
amount already accounts for 85% of the median take home pay for average American renters and over 82% for an average homeowner. This is excluding other essential expenses like transportation, childcare, and debt payments.
Many Americans are really struggling with just the increase of costs of living and food and housing. Utility bills have gone up, car insurance has gone up, homeowners insurance has gone up. And how can they pay for them but also meet other goals that they have to?
Budgeting experts advise
I say we go back to family livings. I don't know the proper term, I forget, but I say we go back to living in the days where we all lived on one property as one big family, and we live like that. I think that would be honestly the next best thing for people. Come together, maybe buy one big house and just live in that one house and try to figure things out, as people had kids and expand on the house. I think at this point that might be worth it. That's just a thought.
Americans to spend just 50% of their net income on essentials, 30% on wants, and 20% on savings or paying off debt.
We see that allocation shifting significantly where people are spending 75% of their take home just on needs, which leaves very little for wants and very little for saving for your financial future. So, depending upon where you live and, of course, your income, many Americans really cannot meet that target allocation.
So much of managing your financial life in America today is like drinking from a fire hose. I think many households are not able to show up and impose a framework of their own design onto their finances. Many are still in this reactionary space where they're just trying to figure out how to make ends meet.
The Federal Reserve has implemented 11 interest rate hikes to combat inflation since March 2022. But more than a third of Americans said rising interest rates kept them from financial comfort.
Higher interest rates really can stand in the way of affordability for many financial activities or decisions that people want to engage in, and home purchases is sort of at the top of that list.
Look at the person who was going to buy a house that was, let's say, $375,000 2 years ago. Their monthly payment would have been less than $2,000. Now it's about $3,400, and it's the same
Jeez.
house, right? The only thing that has
Nothing
changed is the
changed.
interest rate.
Purchasing a car is more expensive. It's more expensive to maintain a balance on a credit card, with the new offers for a credit card, even for the best qualified individual, being at 20.5%, and other people are paying closer to 30.
The cost of capital is going up very rapidly. And many of the kind of toeholds we saw for lower income households was because they were having access to credit and to home loans and to other things in a relatively flat economy where they still had a good job market. The ability to access credit, both for small businesses and for households, is getting much harder as the financial system becomes more,
Because they got to make sure to get their money back.
Credit is essential because Americans don't have the savings to cover big expenses. More than 40% of Americans blamed insufficient retirement funds or emergency savings as a reason for financial insecurity.
For a lot of people, just to feel subjectively feel financially better, they need some amount of savings. A lot of financial planners will say 3 months of your income. That's, for many people, so overwhelming that they can't even begin to think about it.
Right.
More than half of Americans today said they didn't have at least 3 months of emergency expenses saved, including 22% that said they had no emergency savings at all.
It doesn't take unemployment to really knock somebody out of whack with respect to their personal finances if they're among the many Americans who say they cannot afford a $1,000 emergency expense and to pay that from their savings.
The reality is, if expenses are routinely higher than your income, you are not going to be able to put away meaningful sums. There are many, many households who do the verb of saving. You see money go into their account all the time. It just doesn't stay there because they are routinely hit with a need to grab that little bit of money and use it for some kind of income shock or unexpected expense or even expected expense.
36% of Americans said they had more credit card debt than emergency savings. According to Experian, an average American holds a debt balance of $96,371, which includes several loan products like credit cards, auto loans, and mortgages. More than a quarter of Americans said debt was what kept them from financial security.
Debt is a way of channeling some of our financial resources, and that can be a very effective tool. Many of us are fans of credit cards that have rewards, for example. But if you're not paying that principal or debt off within the billing cycle, that's when those double-digit percentage interest rates hit, and that can then exact a toll on the other
Right.
aspects of your personal finances.
How do we properly address this so that people cannot be in the cycle of just focusing on paying debt and necessities, but can even think about transitioning to that other 20% and creating an emergency savings, which causes financial stability, or
Right.
even saving for retirement, which is the goal of creating future financial stability in retirement?
The fact that many Americans are living in financial insecurity poses a big risk to the economy as a whole.
There's a reason why we measure and monitor very closely things like consumer confidence or consumer sentiment, because what populates those data points are everyday measurements like inflation and the strength of the job market.
Hmm.
I think COVID really showed us that households, when they don't have a level of stability and security, are actually the primary foundation of whether the economy can be strong or not, because we are so based on consumer spending in this country.
Public policy can greatly improve Americans' chances of achieving financial security.
So, for example, Social Security is the bedrock of most people's financial security in retirement. It's not the only source of their retirement income, but it keeps a lot of the older people out of
Right.
poverty. And we know that Social Security needs some reforms in order to maintain its same level of benefits. And then also anything we can do to make sure that employers are offering any kind of retirement savings opportunities, emergency savings opportunities at work, offering employees the ability to enroll in benefits, whether that's health insurance or insurance for life insurance or disability insurance. Employers are a key part of this too, and public policies play a big role in terms of what employers can offer and at what price they can afford it.
The household's willingness to work toward financial security is also important.
Ultimately, the answer here is that solutions have to be arrived at the macro level as well
Hmm.
as the household level. And so, at some level, we all need to try to own our own financial success by managing our money as well as we can across the range of areas like emergency savings and retirement.
Financial advisors say the first step is to have a clear goal.
What do you want to achieve personally? What do you want to achieve at work? When do you want to retire? What do you want to do for others? And write that down.
But the key to success comes down to budgeting.
Everyone should budget. What we
Right.
say is it's not what you earn, it's what you keep. And so think about and have some transparency of where is your money going. And then make sure the budget that you have aligns with the goals that you wrote down. If you say you want to retire early, are you saving more to retire early? If you want to put your children through college, if you want to be debt free, are you paying more on your student loans? Are you paying more on your credit cards so you can be debt free?
Mm.
Make sure that your budget aligns with your goals.
There are actually millions of people struggling. It's not something that people want to talk about, but if you're in a place where your financial security feels super precarious, you're not alone. And it's not your fault.
Many people who have really high incomes and a lot of savings still feel financially anxious. So don't feel like this is your fault or something to do with the fact that your income isn't enough. We all have to deal with this in different ways. The most
Right.
important thing you can do is just acknowledge that and deal with it and not try to avoid it.
Yeah, and that's pretty much the end of the video. I mean, I get what they're saying. It's definitely extremely hard out here in the economy. Like they mentioned in the video, household items, needs, and wants, everything has skyrocketed to the point where people's income can no longer keep up. It's truly a sad thing. But you guys like, comment, and subscribe, and you guys tell me, are you guys in the same predicament? Not sure what the future is going to hold for you, financially anxious? You guys let